straight to our first speaker. So Dr. Alexandra Ravinthi. So you may have seen her like dealing with a lot of the other pests of South Florida. But she was with the team that was working on this originally. And so yeah, we'll just go straight here with Dr. Alexandra Ravinthi.
Thank you, John. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for being with us today. Well, just a moment to share my screen. Can you now see my slides?
Perfect.
Okay. So good morning, everyone. Thank you for being with us today. And I will start today's talk with a broad overview about Ficus whitefly, then talk about the biology and the ecology of this pest, because these are important elements to know if we want to achieve sustainable management. And then we are going to talk about in more detail about several management practices that we can follow. As you can see, several people from my lab and my former advisor, Dr. Manion, have contributed in this talk, and I would really like to thank them in advance. So the Ficus whitefly is also known as the fig whitefly. Officially, this is its common name. That pest was first detected in Florida in 2007, and right now it is considered as an established pest in the state. We know that the Ficus whitefly has a worldwide distribution, but it originates from the Southeast Asia, and it was first reported from India. However, it has been found being established in several countries located in Europe and Northern Africa, as well as North, Central, and South America. Regarding the distribution of the Ficus whitefly within the United States of America, it has been reported as an established pest in three big states, Florida, California, and Arizona. As you can see, in Florida, 24 counties have reported the pest, while in California, 7 counties, and Arizona reports has only 1 county with a whitefly being present. A few things about the Ficus whitefly. We know that this pest feeds on both sides of the leaves, right? It attacks the canopy, so it feeds on both sides of the leaves, but it lays its egg on the underside of the leaves. It does produce honeydew, so this sticky substance when we touch the leaves of the plant, that it's a little bit sticky, so it does produce honeydew. However, it does not produce this white wax that we can see in infestations with other whitefly species. The symptoms can vary, but primarily we observe leaf yellowing, leaf drop, especially when the infestation is severe, dieback of the entire plant, and the most characteristic symptom of the infestation with the Ficus whitefly is that the symptoms start from the lower part of the canopy, and then we can see the defoliation moving upwards. So we end up with plants, as you can see in both of these pictures, we end up with the plants that at the lower part, they don't have leaves at all, while the upper part of the plants have some remaining leaves. Some more pictures just to show you how severe the infestation can be. This pest has the tendency to really be very aggressive towards specific cultivars of ornamental ficus plants, and it can lead them to defoliation and completely destroy established ficus hedges. So let's see a little bit a few more details about the biology of the Ficus whitefly. And I should also say something that I forgot. A lot of this information that I'm showing you today has been taken from a published paper that was led by Dr. Ahmed, who is one of the speakers today. And I will also show you the paper, and you can download it for free. It's an open access paper. So let's go back to the biology. So the females need to mate with the males in order to being able to produce eggs. And we know that a female can lay up to almost 38 eggs during her lifespan, her life. What happens is that she lays the eggs mostly on the lower side of the leaves, and then the eggs require around 10 to 11 days to hatch. And you can see in these pictures that depending on the age of the egg, they change color. So in the beginning, they are translucent, light yellow to light green, and as they mature and they are ready to hatch, then they change into a darker color, darker yellow or darker green. When the eggs hatch, we have the emergence of the first instar larvae, and then this stage we call it crawlers. And this is one of the two stages. I'm going to talk a bit more later about it. It's one of the two stages that it moves. The first one is the adult stage, right? That they can fly, they have wings, and the second one is are the crawlers. So these nymphs, they have legs and they move. They are mobile, and this is one of their dispersive states. So after being crawlers, they mold into a second instar nymph, as we call them, and this is where they become immobile. They set on their leaf and they stop moving, and then they continuously feeding on that particular spot of the leaf. Afterwards, they mold to a third instar or third nymph and the fourth instar after several days. A few more days later, we observe the formation of the pupae, right? And we can already see how the body of the whitefly starts forming and the two red eyes. And after a little while, we have the adult emergence. And we also can observe on the leaf the exuvia, the pupal case that they leave behind when they emerge as adults. So the adult lives 4 more days after it exits, and depending on the gender, they try to find the females and the males trying to find each other in order to mate. And this is the complete life cycle of the Ficus whitefly. All this work was done at 25 degrees Celsius, which is 77 Fahrenheit. Usually, if we go a couple of degrees higher, around 27 Celsius or 80 Fahrenheit, this life cycle can be shorter. But on average, the Ficus whitefly requires 32 or 33 days to complete its life cycle. So from the same publication, we have a very nice diagram that shows the Ficus whitefly population dynamics in Miami-Dade County. When this whitefly first appeared, Miami-Dade County had a very large production of Ficus benjamina plants, the Benjamin ficus. And at that time, the pest pressure was very high. And several studies occurred in order to better understand the fluctuations of the populations of the whitefly over the course of a year. So in this graph, you will see on the y-axis the number of adult Ficus whitefly that goes from 0 to 120 over the different months of the year. We started January 1st until December. Until mid-December. And you will see that during the winter months, let's say from January until even a little bit early spring, April, in general, the adult Ficus whitefly population remains relatively low. But then from May, we start seeing the adult whitefly population increasing. And it fluctuates, of course, depending on the environmental conditions, the temperature, the humidity, the occurrence of rainfall. But as you will see, over the spring and summer, it starts building up. The population of the adult whitefly, it starts going up. And then towards the fall, when the temperature starts decreasing, and also we have a decrease in the rainfall occurrence, we see that the adult whitefly population really picks up. So this is like from September until even, we would say, late November, we have high densities of adult Ficus whitefly. And of course, towards December again, when we start having cold fronts and the rain really goes down, the population starts decreasing. So regarding the dispersal of this pest, as I already mentioned, it has two dispersing stages. These are the stages that the whitefly can move, and it can infest new plants and new leaves, right? So the first one is the crawlers, or the first instar nymph, and the second one is the adult stage. So the modes of dispersals are two: ambulatory, so they walk, this happens in the case of crawlers, and aerial, when they use air currents in order to disperse. And the adults, they do use their wings to fly, and they take advantage also of the wind currents in order to maximize their dispersal capability. However, studies have shown that the Ficus whitefly is not a very good dispersing pest. So it does move from one plant to another, and of course is very successful in doing that. We have seen it with the hedges. However, it is not known that it can fly very large distances, as we know with other pests. So we do know that the Ficus whitefly attacks plants of the genus Ficus. And in the United States, we have 11 reported hosts, and you can see a list of these hosts here. You can also find this list in the publication that I mentioned. If we dive a little bit more into which hosts are more preferred by the Ficus whitefly, we will see three species. The one is the narrow-leaf fig, then the weeping feet, which is the Ficus benjamina, is very popular and highly susceptible to the Ficus whitefly, and then the Ficus microcarpa, that its common name is Malayan penayan, I think it's pronounced. So these are the three preferred hosts, and they have been reported being very susceptible to the Ficus whitefly. However, Dr. Mannion did a series of other experiments trying to understand on which host the Ficus whitefly can lay eggs, can reproduce, and she found that there were 4 species of plants on which the Ficus whitefly did not lay any eggs. These ones are the fig tree, like Ficus carica, the fiddle leaf fig, the climbing fig, and the sacred fig. So we do know that managing the Ficus whitefly, especially in the landscape, is a challenge. The reason for this is just this is a very persistent pest. Although 17 years have passed since its first interception in Florida, it still poses a big problem for landscapers and nursery producers. So we have also received reports that chemical control sometimes fail to achieve the efficacy that was expected. Additionally, the demand for perfect hedges is still present, hasn't decreased at all. People, of course, when they have established a nice ficus hedge, they want this hedge to be perfect in order to provide privacy and to be aesthetically great. And the other thing that we know is that replacing the ficus hedges is not a financial option. So when initially this pest appeared, there were a lot of studies showing that there might be alternative crops to ficus plants for hedges. And they were recommending that hedges with a ficus should be removed and be replaced with podocarpus or clusia. And they were very nice also alternative options. Yes, this is true when you can afford it. It is an excellent option. However, replacing big established hedges that we have in the landscape for decades is not easy and certainly not cheap. So we need to start thinking management practices that can actually yield good results. For that reason, we have a very well-established theoretical and practical framework that is called integrated pest management. So this framework, when it was first established, it started describing that if we want to have a sustainable management that is going to give us good results over time, we need to integrate, to combine several practices together as a whole, not only one or two. It has to be several practices, and we do a holistic approach. These practices start from the monitoring, of course, just to know what pests you have, when they appear, so you know what is happening on the plant or on the heads in this case all the time. Then cultural practices, which are practices that deals with fertilization, pruning, irrigation, small things that we can do in addition to biological control, which is the use of other organisms to battle, to mitigate the target pest, and chemical control, which is the use of insecticides and pesticides in general to control the target pest. So the IPM, it is a framework, and we have a lot of experimental data about various pests in the world, that by doing these combinations of practices as a whole throughout the year, we can achieve sustainable management and achieve great results without impacting the plant health. So in the landscape in Florida, the current management practices against the Ficus whitefly is chemical control. And the only variation is basically either we are using systemic pesticides or contact insecticides, right? So this already tells us that we have space for improvement, and there is space to start thinking additional things that we can do to be more successful in managing the Ficus whitefly. So I have put here a QR code for a very nice web page that we have that is dedicated to the Ficus whitefly, and I will show you the web page at the end of the presentation. In this web page, you will find a very nice detailed document that summarizes all the active ingredients and the formulated products that are registered for use in Florida that can be applied to ornamental plants depending on the site. It can be either in the landscape or in production in nursery, right? And it is color coded. So today I'm going to be showing you pictures of this very nice and detailed document and just guide you through about all the different options that are available regarding chemical control, because we do have several chemical control tools that we should start considering in order to enhance the different modes of actions and avoid resistance. So first and foremost, the most popular one, and today I'm only gonna talk about the landscape. In that document, you will have information that has to do with the production, the nursery as well. But today I'm gonna focus only on the ones that they can be applied in the landscape. So we have, in this first slide, we will see two groups, the 3A, which are the pyrethroids or pyrethrins, and the neonics, the neonicotinoids, that they are the 4A. In this table, you will see the 3A with this dark green and the 4A with the orange. The color coding is very helpful because it can help you design your rotation just by thinking colors and not jargon related to modes of action and pesticides. It's just an easy way for you to make sure that you're on track with the rotation. So we have these two very popular groups. However, we have a lot more. And this is like several examples. We have the 4Ds that you will see them here. They are also in this light orange category, but they are 4Ds, they are not 4As. These are called butanolides. We also have 6, the ivermectins. Here is missing the landscape side, but ivermectins like abamectin, which is the most important active ingredient of this class, this can be applied in the landscape as well. Then we have the 7C, the pyroxyphen, we see with a different color. Then we have the 9Bs, with all this very long name, but you can see the color coding that it is a yellow color, different group, different mode of action. Then Similar, different group, but similar mode of action is 9D pyropins, right? So 9D also yellow, but slightly different. It's not like the 9B is 9D. If we move further in the same table, we will find more groups with insecticides that should be considered. Then we have group 16 that you will see with a dark orange. Then the 21A with a light gray, the 23 that is a light purple, the 28 that is a dark purple, and then 29 that is another gray color. So you can see we have several groups of insecticides that they are color coded that we should consider when we want to mitigate the ficus whitefly using chemical control. Of course, label is the law, and you need to make sure that these active ingredients can be applied on the site where you need them, and they can apply it in the way that you want to apply them. So the label will tell you whether the pesticides can be applied as a foliar spray application or whether they can be drenched, so you can apply them on the root. Some active ingredients and products allow both of application types. Some other products allow only one specific application method. Also, you will see that this table continues, and we have a group that is known as unknown mode of action group. There is this green here, and it has several, 5 to be precise here, 5 different groups of products that can be considered. One is the active ingredient azadirachtin. There is a plant based active ingredient. Then we have mineral oils and paraffinic oils. These are horticultural oils. We have insecticidal soaps. And we have another category that is the entomopathogenic fungi. This actually is considered even as biological control product because it's using a live organism, in this case is a fungus, right, to mitigate a pest. So this unknown group also offers several options to be considered when we want to apply chemical control. And we also know that for this group, for the unknown groups, these are environmentally friendly choices. And in many cases, these choices can also be compatible with biological control and other practices. They are also less risky for human health and pets that they can be found in landscape settings. So regarding biological control, in the same publication, you will see very nice pictures and list of natural enemies that do occur here in Florida that have been found to be associated with the ficus whitefly. And this includes groups like the Coleoptera, which are like beetles, right? Hymenoptera, that we have several parasitoids, right? And Neuroptera, as here that you see the Chrysoperla carnea, which happens that particular species to be also commercially available. So you can buy it and from a biological control company even. So if you don't have it on your hedges naturally, this specific species can also be purchased by a biological control company. In addition to that, there are also another group of biological control agents, and these are the mite groups, and specifically mites that belongs to the family Phytosaenidae. We call them phytocetes. And these are excellent biological control agents. And this family includes species that we use especially in commercial production of ornamental plants to mitigate important pests such as spider mites, thrips, whiteflies, and we have seen them really contributing to a sustainable management of pests. So in the following slides, I'm going to focus a little bit on the potential of this group of predators. And more specifically, I will be talking about Amblysseus stomatavensis. This is a phytocete mite that was discovered as a good predator on the silver leaf whitefly, also known as Bemisia tabaci, in Brazil. However, we also had the opportunity to find this predator in South Florida, here in Homestead in Miami-Dade County, naturally occurring in the environment. So we thought, since this predatory mite has so very good potential in Brazil targeting the silver leaf whitefly, can we take advantage of this whitefly to use it against the Ficus can we take advantage of this predator to use it against the Ficus whitefly? So, let me see. Then we started conducting some research in order to answer this question. And we knew from Brazil that Amblyseius stomatavensis prefers and is a predator of the silver leaf whitefly, right? So we wanted to make sure that it can also feed on Ficus whitefly, but we didn't know on which states it can feed and whether it could feed. So we did an experiment in which we offered to the predator 12 eggs of the Ficus whitefly or 12 eggs of the silver leaf whitefly, the Bemisia tabaci. We also did some experiments where we offered them 3 crawlers of the Ficus whitefly and 3 crawlers of the Bemisia tabaci, because we wanted to see which is the stage that we should really target, which stage of the whitefly we should target. Then, when we had this arena set, we released 1 pregnant female of the predator, and pregnant is important. They should be already pregnant, carry an egg, because this is the stage in which the predators are voracious. They are hungry, they are trying to reproduce, so they really go after the prey, right? And of course, in our experiment, we included treatments where we had only the whiteflies, right? We didn't release a predator as a control. And what we did, after we releasing the predator, we scored how many individuals, so how many eggs or how many crawlers of each species were eaten by the predator. And we also scored how many eggs were laid by the predator. In this graph, you will see on the y-axis the proportions of consumed whiteflies regarding, of course, the whitefly states. The different colors refer to different whitefly species. So with the white, we have the Bemisia tabaci, the silver leaf whitefly, and with the gray color, we have the Ficus whitefly. So we will see when it comes down to how many eaten eggs were, how many consumed eggs we had, we saw that Amblyseius stomatavensis consumed significantly more eggs of Bemisia tabaci than the Ficus whitefly. However, when we checked on the crawlers, we saw that Amblyseius stomatavensis consumed significantly higher numbers of crawlers when compared to the crawlers of the Bemisia tabaci, but also when compared to the eggs. So overall, when we pulled all this data together, we saw that Amblyseius stomatavensis preferred to feed on Ficus whitefly crawlers even more than feeding on any of the 2 stages of the silver leaf whitefly. So this was already promising, because we saw another thing that happened, that when the predators fed on the silver leaf whitefly, regardless the states, and when they fed on the Ficus whitefly eggs, they could not reproduce. And that is a big important information, because if a predator cannot reproduce, then it cannot establish on the heads on the plant, and it means that it doesn't have good potential as a biocontrol agent. So we saw that with the Bemisia tabaci and also with the Ficus whitefly eggs, we didn't see establishment potential of the predator. However, when the predators fed on Ficus whitefly crawlers, they started their oviposition, and on average, they lay 0.23 eggs per female per day, which is very normal for this group of predators. They usually lay maximum 1 egg per day. Then another good aspect of this experiment is that the control treatment, where we had only the Ficus whitefly, The eggs, of course, the egg survival was 100%, right? And the crawlers also survive in the case of Bemisia 96%, and in the case of the Ficus whitefly 88%. The crawlers didn't, this deviance from the 100% was not because the crawlers died, was because the crawlers molt to the second instar nymph. So we had a good indication from a lab that Amblysseus tamatavensis should be further explored as potential predator of the Ficus whitefly. So we decided to do a greenhouse experiment in which we had 3 treatments. A control treatment where we had infested plants, but we didn't release any predator. A low treatment, as we call it, in which we released 10 predators, and a high treatment in which we released 20 predators. So what did we do? We took individual Ficus benhamina plants. We infested them with 30 whiteflies, 15 males and 15 females. And then we allowed the whiteflies to establish for 10 days. Why did we do that? Because we know that as soon as the females and the males mate and they start laying their eggs, it takes approximately 10 days, right, to have the emergence of the crawlers. And from the lab experiment, we saw that the predators prefer to feed on the crawlers. So we were trying to hit exactly that stage. And this is why we gave 10 days heads up to the whiteflies. So after 10 days, we released the female predators that they were young and gravid. They were 2 days old, right? And then we conducted every week samplings. And in every time what we were doing, we were collecting 2 leaves from the plants, but from 3 parts of the canopy, the top, the middle, and the bottom, in order to make sure that we cover all the distribution of the canopy. And every time we would score how many whiteflies were eaten by the predator, how many whiteflies were still live on the leaf, and whether we would find predators on the collected leaves. And we replicated, we had also, I forgot to mention, 8 replicants per treatment. So in this graph, we will see on the y-axis the average number of live whiteflies over the sampling dates. We started in October and finish mid-October and finish mid-December. And you will see the control, the low and the high treatments with different colors. Light for the control, and as we go higher, the green color becomes darker. So you will see that in the beginning of the experiment, more or less, the population of the whitefly was around 200 individuals, right? Pretty uniform because we infested them with the same number of whiteflies. And as the days were passing, we will see that this number would decrease. But at some point, it started decreasing before it started increasing again. Why is that? Because on this graph, we have the average number of live predators for exactly the same number of days. And you will see that in the beginning, the whiteflies were getting a heads up because the predator population was low. But as soon as the predator population started going up, right, around the same time, we saw a decline on the prey population, on the whitefly population. And these dynamics fluctuated. Important for the experiment is that in the control treatment, where we didn't release predator, during our sampling dates, we never found a single predator mite. So our experiment was valid. But this experiment also taught us a lot of things. They told us that Amblysseus tamatavensis could establish and reproduce on infested ficus plants. We saw not only adult females, but we saw all the different stages of the predators. And this is great news for biological control. We found predation taking place not only on the crawlers and eggs in the greenhouse experiment, but we saw that some nymphs, right, some of these immobile stages were also preyed by the predators. Then what we saw as an indication from these greenhouse experiments is that the predators may not be as aggressive as the Ficus whitefly. And we want to do more experiments in order to explore the potential of Amblysseus tamatavensis and increase the number of predators and give the prey less time to to establish and being aggressive on the plant. So going to the cultural practices, one of the good practice to do, as soon as you see that the ficus whiteflies appear on the heads, you need to reduce the nitrogen immediately. Stop putting nitrogen. We do know that pests and whiteflies respond positively on the presence of the nitrogen because they make the plant is more vigorous and it is a good host for them, and they increase their population when they have access to, when the plant has access to large amount of nitrogen. So another thing, try to avoid water stress plants. Having a good balance regarding irrigation is very important because when the plants are water stressed, they become more susceptible to the whiteflies. Another easy cultural practice that you can implement is to collect fallen leaves that they have been on the ground because of the whitefly or because naturally sometimes they drop the leaves. Remove these leaves in order to control potential populations that they are on these leaves. Also, remove the weeds. Weeds can also serve as a reservoir. When you spray your heads and you do chemical control or biological control, the whiteflies will try to avoid these practices and they will try for a little while to find a reservoir to weeds or other hosts. By removing these weeds, you're decreasing the possibility of them, how can I say, being exposed to the practices that you are implementing. And if it is feasible and possible for you, you can consider intercropping. You can consider blending the ficus plants that you might have with other plants that they are no hosts. Then the million-dollar question, when do I need to act, right? So we saw that graph and we saw when the populations are low. Then when the populations are low in January and early spring, this is the time to do preventive actions, right? This is the time if you want to consider applying a systemic insecticide that takes minimum 2 weeks to reach all the part of the plant. And of course, this depends on how large the plant is, how large is the canopy, how large is the heads, right? It depends on the active ingredient that you are choosing. On the label, you will see, depending on the product, minimum 2 weeks for the active ingredient to really go to the leaves if it is drenched in the soil. There are some active ingredients that might need 4 or 6 weeks even. So if you want to be proactive and do some preventative actions, this is the time to do it when the ficus whitefly population is low. Then, when it starts building up, but it's not high, this is where you have some space for biological control. This is where you can continue taking preventive actions, but you should take into consideration that you might have natural enemies on your heads. So you need to help these natural enemies survive your spray applications or other management practices. So if you still want to spray because the ficus whitefly is going up, consider soaps, oils. If the temperature is not high, consider biological spray applications and entomopathogenic fungi, right? Or if you want to try releasing biological control agents that they are commercially available, like the Chrysoperla carnea, this is the time to consider this aspect. Then, of course, when the whitefly population really picks up, when we are in the high season, this is the time to take curative actions, right? This is the time to be aggressive towards the whitefly, to apply foliar spray applications and try to mitigate it before it is too late and damage the heads. However, if you take good preventive actions, implement biological control, the implementation of curative actions will be less. So in that publication, you will see it here. It has a wonderful field key on how to manage the ficus whitefly. So you can work on this key and you will see, depending on the situation that you are facing, which are your options. But in brief, you should scout, of course, monitor, see what you have. You should act immediately upon detection. Don't let the whitefly to start building, right? Be on top of the heads. Make sure you preserve the natural enemies because they can do the work for you even if you haven't noticed the presence of the Ficus whitefly. Make sure you rotate insecticides with different mode of action. So when we have different mode of action, we want to blend these colors that I showed you. Not only the letters, we want really to blend the colors in order to avoid potential resistance and to be more successful in managing the pest. Then try to keep the foliar spray applications to minimum. They are harmful to the natural enemies, they are harmful to pesticide applicators and to the people living in that they are in contact with the landscape, right? So try to keep them minimum. And also, it will be good to consider oils and soaps when the temperature is low, because these are environmentally friendly products that they are compatible with biological control and cultural practices that they can really enhance your management. So closing, I just want you to remember that yes, the Ficus whitefly is a persistent pest that unfortunately we haven't been able to really mitigate it successfully in all the counties. It is a poor disperser, so we can take advantage of that. It doesn't fly large distances. It does specializes on the genus Ficus, but Florida has natural enemies of this whitefly pest that we should try to get advantage of them. Practicing integrated pest management can lead into sustainable management of the Ficus whitefly, and it's more environmentally friendly. And remember that chemical control alone is not sustainable, it's not financially sustainable, and it's not environmentally sustainable. So with that, I want to show you the website that I told you, where you can also find the link to the publication. This is the QR code. And a big thank you to my lab and people that have contributed to the research, especially the biological control aspect of it. And of course, thank you for your attention. And I'm sorry that I am a few minutes late.
No, that was great information. So thank you, Alexandra. So next we got Dr. Z. Ahmed.
Thank you, John. Can you see my talk, the slide?
Looks perfect.
Okay. So in pre-test, we have seen, I think there are about 40% they were involved, the participants, and 60 to 70% of those, they were wrong about the identification of whitefly. 70% were wrong in case of adult Ficus whitefly, and about 60% were wrong about the pupae of Ficus whitefly. So I guess that justify my talk today. So again, I am Z. Ahmed. I work as a research entomologist at Fort Pierce facility, Fort Pierce USDA facility. Almost all of the inquiries related to whitefly I received in the last few years were on the Ficus whitefly. So it may not be wrong to say the Ficus whitefly is still among the top 3 invasive whitefly species in Florida. First, what is whitefly, right? We're talking about whitefly today, but it's important to know, despite its name whitefly, it's not true fly, like the housefly, which is, the housefly is in insect order Diptera, but whiteflies are in the order Hemiptera. They are more related to, I would say, tiny scales, millibugs, instead of housefly, despite its name is whitefly. Typical whitefly adult looks like a tiny white moth with the yellowish body, 4 whitish wings. Here you can see on this slide, ash whitefly. Here you can see a whitefly adult sitting on a penny and can get the idea of its size, which is in the range from 1 to 3 millimeter. So this is a sugarcane spotted whitefly. Sometimes their wings are covered with white dust and waxy powder. So it is important to know there are a lot of whiteflies which are in Florida, and the Ficus whitefly is one of them. So if I have to summarize, there are about 80 indigenous and invasive whitefly species reported from Florida so far. And this number is constantly increasing. I identified at least 3 more to add in this total in the last few years. Most of them are exotic, which makes their control very difficult since their natural enemies are not available in Florida. Here I put together top 5 whiteflies in Florida on this slide according to their sizes. Giant whitefly is the biggest in the size. It invaded in Florida in 1996. Then the second biggest is in terms of size is Rugo's sparling whitefly, which invaded Florida in 2009. Then Ficus whitefly, according to size, which invaded, as Alex mentioned earlier in her talk, 2007. Bond or nesting whitefly in 2011. Then paper whitefly, which possibly has 2 introductions. One was in I think 1960s, and then other was in 2015. Then we have the most common whitefly, which we call sweet potato whitefly, and silver leaf whitefly, which is the most common among whiteflies globally in the world. It invaded Florida in 90s as B biotype, then around 2005 and 2006 as Q biotype in greenhouses, and 2016 in the landscape. It is very important to know there are other whiteflies out there in the landscape. Among them, these are major pests so far. Ficus whitefly, which is the topic we're talking about today, is one of the most challenging whitefly species among them. As I mentioned, it was reported in 2007 in the US, in Florida. Since then, the trends of using ficus hedges have been decreasing in Florida. So if you see here, the adult Ficus whitefly on this slide, I don't know if you can see my mouse, it has a band, which is the grayish brown band in the middle, slightly slanting towards the inner wing margin. So this band helps to distinguish it among other whiteflies in Florida. Yes, there are other whiteflies in Florida and also on ficus hedges. Let's move to immature whitefly stages. The immature whiteflies, which we call nymph, typically occur on undersides of the leaf. So in most of whiteflies, which I encounter in my career, most of the time you will find them, almost all of the time you will find them underside of the leaf, with exception in ficus whitefly, in which you will find nymphs on both sides of the leaf. And nymphs are flat, oval, slightly smaller than a pinhead. This is naked eye view of whitefly nymph. You would need 10x to 30x hand length to distinguish and count older and young nymphs. And it is very important to distinguish older and young nymph, because that helps to figure out how many generations are there and how many generations are overlapping on your ficus hedges. Here is 30x view. This is the 30x view of general whitefly pupae, very clear with 30x. It seems all of them are older nymph, and some of them are already turned into adult whitefly. Typically, whitefly pupae are transparent yellow. But in some cases, whitefly pupae are black and have a white waxy fringe around them. This is a mulberry whitefly. Here I put together pupae of different whitefly species found in Florida. They are different in color, black, white, yellow, different in shapes, round, oval, elongate. Some of them have spines, wax eyes, stripes, etc. Again, I want to help you to understand there are a lot of other whiteflies which we are dealing in Florida, and the Ficus whitefly is one of them. And I like to emphasize on pupae, because pupae are already on the plant. They are not moving, so you can find them faster. And then pupae, we usually use them in identification. So it's very important to know about pupae of whitefly. Here I arrange them according to their sizes, shape, and wax characters. You can see on your top right, the Ficus whitefly does not have any wax. It is transparent yellow and relatively bigger as compared to other pupae. So there are over 98 whitefly species that can feed on ficus plant species worldwide. Yes, it's not just the ficus whitefly. There are several other species, and 33 of them were reported only from ficus plants around the world. Among them, at this stage, one species, which we are calling today the ficus whitefly, has been causing damage to ficus hedges and trees globally for at least 2 decades. So yeah, there are other species, but they don't cause damage, but they are there. You will find them on ficus hedges. And it is very important to figure out the ficus whitefly, which we think is the pestiferous, is most pestiferous. Which one is this? So though major damages to ficus hedges in Florida are associated with ficus whitefly, at least 5 more whitefly species can feed on ficus species in Florida. If you see on this slide, on your left are pupae. They have wax, and actually 3 of them, they are black, but they are called whiteflies, but they are black pupae, but they have wax. Here on your right, on this slide, you will see adults. They can look like ficus whitefly if you don't see them closely. But pupae, they are very distinguishing since they have wax, and some of them, they are black in color. In most cases, the infestation was found in last, I would say, 13 years, was single infestation of ficus whitefly. But generally in last few years, whenever I go visit ficus hedges, I am finding multiple whitefly species affecting ficus hedges in general. So here I concluded pupae of those whitefly species which I'm finding on ficus. There are at least 4 different types, and the ficus whitefly pupae is, as I mentioned earlier, transparent yellow. But rest of them, one is black. This is a Ficus whitefly. Then the other one is rugose sparling whitefly. It has a wax, and the last one is Mondar nesting whitefly. It has a wax, and wax is covered the dorsum side. So you can distinguish ficus whitefly pupae faster in the field if you have understanding about other pupae. But adult can be challenging because they can look identical to other species, because if, for example, if an adult just emerged from the pupae, it may have a similar bandage, or maybe just not bandage is not very clear, so you cannot distinguish them easily if they just emerge from pupae. So it's very important to get yourself familiarized with other species which are present on ficus hedges in Florida. So let's move to whitefly damage. So I'm talking about in general, the whitefly secretes honeydew, which is the common associated damage with whiteflies in general, and that which develops into sooty mold on leaves and gives blackish appearance, but that is not the main indicator of the ficus whitefly infestation in the field. This is a case of citrus whitefly, and citrus whitefly secretes a lot of honeydew, and that attracts sooty mold, and just gives appearance to citrus plant, blackish appearance. Another damage symptom of whitefly in general is wax. So this is the infestation of giant whitefly. Giant whitefly secrete long white waxy filament, and it gives leaf surface a bared appearance. These hair-like strands sometimes get mistaken as fungal infection as well. So, but this is again not the case of damage which is associated with ficus whitefly. So what is the major indicator of ficus whitefly infestation? Defoliation. A slight delay in control when is needed, could lead to surprise defoliation of ficus hedges. Such defoliation often creates stress, panic, and you need to have immediate control. And the homeowners, they have to spend extra time, extra money to control it. So to avoid this stressful situation, it is very important to understand how to detect, diagnose, and scout ficus whiteflies. Here's another example of trees in a residential landscape. They were almost defoliated because of ficus whitefly infestation. In one of our experiments, we found that the ficus plant defoliated due to ficus whitefly infestation was refoliated in 2.5 months with the vigilant care. In the case of heavy infestation of ficus whitefly that has resulted in defoliation of ficus hedges, we suggest remaining patient, pruning out dead branches, checking the suppleness of twigs. There are cases where excessive defoliation can lead to branch dieback if ficus whitefly is not managed promptly. The amount of dieback could depend overall on a level of infestation and the health of ficus hedges. Here's an example of ficus hedges which were defoliated due to ficus whitefly in the landscape and then refoliated in few months with proper management. On the top is top after few months. You can see the leaves, the new flush is coming, and the bottom is heavy infestation. Same hedge on the bottom was defoliated because of the ficus whitefly. So here's an image which I feel like it's very important to discuss today. I took this image at Palm Beach Island. Here you can see two houses with ficus hedges side by side. The house at your right has healthy hedge with few ficus whitefly that were flying around when we inspected the hedge. However, house on your left has infested hedge. I think that infestation of ficus whitefly there was at least for 2 to 3 generations, which means the control was not working or was not applied at least for 3 to 4 months, and which led to this severe defoliation. So why the healthy one is still healthy, even in the presence of infested hedge in close proximity? 3 words: better management plan. And the foundation of the better management plan is scouting and diagnostics. The same product, after I discussed with the landscaper, I came to know that same product, I think it was imidacloprid with active ingredient, same product with the same active ingredient was applied on both hedges. But one you can see has a heavy defoliation, other did not. So what we came to know, what we concluded was that there was a slight delay in the application on the left hedge, which has led to unexpected defoliation. And this situation caused, again, I mentioned earlier, stress and panic, because the homeowner was not happy. They were very concerned, and they were willing to spend as much money as they could to save their hedge. And this, as I mentioned earlier, this can be prevented with timely application and regular scouting. So here is a scouting. So how to basically plan scouting. So the average temperature in South Florida is optimum for the reproduction of ficus whitefly and also for general whitefly from April to October. Therefore, we recommend the ficus hedges should be inspected on weekly, if not bi-weekly, weekly, and also I would say bi-weekly or weekly if possible, depending on the infestation level during this month. In addition, we recommend monthly scouting from November through March. So you have this period between November to March for your plan to think about if you want to do preventive control, but you still have to scout between November and March, even though population remains very low, because the ficus whitefly population could still is still there, but though is low. And if you will not scout, or if you not understand how much infestation is there, that can surprise you with heavy defoliation on the hedge. So preventive measures such as drenching should be implemented before the start of spring to prevent the buildup of whiteflies as temperature begin to rise. So if you see in this figure that January, February, as you start from December, January, February, March, and maybe start of April. These are the months when you have to scout monthly. You still have to scout monthly and plan your preventive control. And then April, May, June, July, August, September, October, November. These are the months where we recommend scouting weekly, if possible, weekly, otherwise at least bi-weekly, because it will help you to understand what is going on. Because even though your control probably working, but there are other neighbors whose hedges may be not controlled well, the whitefly source is still there. So we talk about now preventive control. So for preventive control, again, you have to understand the population dynamics of the ficus whitefly throughout the year. How about curative control? For curative control, I want to emphasize today, it is very important. Curative control, I'm talking about foliar control here in this case. It is crucial to understand the life stages which are the most susceptible in the life cycle. So total life cycle of ficus whitefly spans about a month. First instar and second instar, and then early third instar are particularly vulnerable, and they're lasting approximately for 9 to 10 days. So those 9 to 10 days, if you're fine, again, it is very, very important for you to understand, you will not find just one generation. There will be overlapping generations, but your best bet is to find out which stage is the prevalent in the field. If you're finding early instars, which is first, second, and early third instar, which is going to last for about 10 days, those are the 10 days are the most important 10 days you can apply your foliar control, and you can break the life cycle of the ficus whitefly. So if you see in this image, it's not hard once you get your eyes trained, but initially you have to practice to understand the size, because if you haven't seen the all stages at one time, you may not able to distinguish based on just size. So it's very important. You can print this page, or this page is online available in the publication. It is very important to get yourself familiarized with the early life stages of the ficus whitefly to make your curative control more effective. So here is summary of my talk. So why is the ficus whitefly, I would say, still challenging in Florida? Unfortunately, scouting is not conducted regularly. That's what I am observing, especially during the month when the ficus whitefly population is at its peak. So if you are applying control blindly without scouting, without knowing the susceptible stages, without knowing the population infestation level, your control probably not give you the result you're expecting. And there is often lack of awareness regarding the life stages that are the most susceptible when applying a curative control. I want to reemphasize again and again on scouting and diagnostics. These two are very, very important in general for pests, but in the ficus whitefly, these are very crucial. If you are if you are on the top of your scouting and diagnosing, when I say diagnosing, I meant to say to distinguishing Ficus whitefly from other species, and also understanding the other life stages which are more vulnerable when you're applying curative and foliar control. So another challenge which I feel like which is a main issue is defoliation fear. There are homeowners and also HOA communities, when I get call from them or I get emails from them, or sometime extension agents, they contact me related the issues related to Ficus whitefly. I felt like the homeowners and HOAs, they are becoming concerned about their hedges when defoliation is already started. So when defoliation already started, that is a panic mode. So that means there is Ficus whitefly is there for at least 3 to 5 generations, because it requires those many generations, which means 3 to 5 months. So those 3 to 5 months was the window period which could be managed before defoliation starts appearing on Ficus hedges, but that window is gone. So if that window is gone, what to do next? Problem is defoliation fear. People start getting worried about the aesthetic value of their hedges, because they want immediate control. They want the leaf back on their hedge right away, which is not possible right away, but it is possible with the planning. So as I mentioned earlier, that you have to be patient and then use the planning which we mentioned in the publication, which I'm going to show you after this slide, after actually 2 slides after this slide. So management plan and be patient, and help the homeowners and other customers who are worried that there is a possibility to bring the hedge back, but it would take some time. And then lastly, which I feel like another important aspect why Ficus whitefly is still challenging in Florida is it's because it's a community pest. In general, when we're talking about landscape pests, most of those pests are community pests, because if you are managing very well, but your neighbor is not managing it, then you are probably not going to have 100% control, or you're not going to have a sustainable control for long term. So it is very important to understand that when you are dealing with the pest in the landscape, especially in this case, the Ficus whitefly, you're going to have a pest flying to your hedge from your neighbor. So it requires a collective efforts, community efforts. So whenever you are planning control or management for Ficus whitefly, it is also important to collaborate and coordinate with other landscaper who are helping neighbors or other Ficus hedges in that close proximity, because it requires a collective efforts when we're dealing with the Ficus whitefly. So Alex already introduced this chemical control. So there is a PDF which is available if you search Ficus whitefly and chemical control, you will get that PDF on the Google. In this PDF, we put together the list of all chemicals which are available. So when I was putting this list together, my aim was that I would not leave any chemical which is available for whitefly, and we don't know. So I think I spent about 3 months putting this list together. It took a huge amount of efforts to put this list together. So please look at this PDF. So this PDF has almost all chemical products which were available by the time I prepared this list. I think I prepared this list in 2022, around that time. So I put the year in the list. So it may need to be, we may need to revise this, but yes, in this PDF, you will find all chemicals which are available to control whitefly and the Ficus whitefly. And I also put together the rates, which I think is very tricky when you are dealing with the with the pest in the landscape. So I put together the rates, also put together labels. So again, it is very important to know labels are law. So in front of each chemical control, which is each chemical product which is mentioned in this PDF, you will, if you click, I think there's a column says labels. If you click that label, you will, I think it's a hyperlinked on the rate. So if you click the hyperlink on the rate, you will get the label as well. So you can also get the information of the label. So please look at this PDF. It contains all chemical by the time when I prepared the list, which are available for whiteflies and the ficus whitefly. And then Alex already mentioned that, but I want to reemphasize that our aim was to put together all information which were available by the time when we started building this website. I think we are successful doing that. So if you go to this website, you will find almost almost all resources whatever are available for control, for diagnostic, for scouting, for control of the ficus whitefly. And this is a great resource to control ficus whitefly. And I received huge positive feedback from those who contacted me, and I gave them this website because they were very happy with the amount of information and the effective information which are available on this website. And in the last, I want to emphasize on the paper which Alex already mentioned in her talk. This paper probably so I think it's we published this paper in 2022, but I first went behind this paper was started when I started a postdoc with Catherine Mannion. That was around 2013 something. So there's a 9-year effort to put together a management plan, which is mentioned in this paper, and that management plan has is actually for both, for production, ficus plant production, and also for the landscape. So I want to reemphasize, and I really want you to look at this paper. This paper contained almost all information from basic biology to the management plan, which I feel like was very effective. I used that management plan myself when I was dealing with the ficus whitefly, or when I was dealing with my stakeholders. So I highly recommend this paper. Yes, that will be end of my talk. Thank you.
Thank you, Z. That was a lot to take in, but yeah, I mean, really solid information, and what we need. And I mean, you're just laying all the resources right out there. And so I'm really glad that you guys have been here and covered such a wide range of topics here. So I'm gonna try and give more of the extension perspective now, which is kind of focuses a little bit more on the realities of the situation. I mean, not that these other talks did not, but more of the people, managing the people side of ficus whitefly. So let's go ahead and I'll try and share my screen. It was giving me a little bit of issues earlier. Hopefully everything will work out this time. Okay. Let me know if there's any problems here and I'll try and correct it. So
it looks good.
Looks good. Awesome. Yeah, so as you can see here, we've got Henry doing some scouting. One of the aspects of IPM that we're trying to emphasize here in terms of controlling it. And then, but I guess most of you that are here are probably here from the commercial perspective. And I just want to continue to emphasize that communication with the clientele is key. I know that a lot of times, it seems it's really mysterious sometimes what we might be doing and what we're trying to accomplish with our objectives, but a little bit of communication can potentially go a long way in terms of them understanding it. I know not all of them want that, but in some instances, it might be worth your time to try and do that. And with that, I'm going to try and cover some aspects of just general ficus management here in terms of pruning practices, and then a little bit of the ecology of the hedges and the landscape as well. So, but these are, if you can talk about these couple of aspects here, it might be worth your while to try and pass this information to make your life a little bit easier with the people that you're working for. And so, you know, there's many of you already know this, but I guess what I'm trying to put across here is like solutions and products can often go in different ways because the objectives might not be the same for what you're trying to achieve with providing both of these. And so, I mean, I guess what I'm trying to say here is that like with relation to how you provide your services, it might be worth providing more of a consultative sales tactic if possible. Tactical sales are kind of the alternative to this, and they're often more lucrative, but you need to build a relationship of trust with the people that you're providing these services for, and that part of that means educating them on the solutions as well, and not just the regime or treatments. So, and then it's interesting here. It's often unintentional, but many cultural practices actually sell the problem. And so intensive and formal landscaping is often not very cost effective. However, it provides an aesthetic some clientele have come to expect. And so, you know, this is something that in, you know, these really formal landscapes, the product is a certain aesthetic. And that doesn't line up necessarily very well with like maintaining the life of these plants. So these things are kind of in conflict with each other in a sense, but it's up to you as the landscaper, landscape manager, to come up with a solution to try and make everything work. So just in terms of like my background's more in arboriculture, and I mean, which, you know, goes into a lot of like the practices of maintaining and pruning shrubs and trees. And, you know, shrubs can be kept at certain levels as hedges. But if we want to keep these straight lines that you can see here, the straight lines require more pruning in general. If you can try and promote rounded forms, and this isn't just true for necessarily ficus hedges, this is all hedges in general. Rounded forms mimic nature a little bit more, and they require a little bit less trimming. Also, keep in mind the shape of, I guess, the angle that they're being cut at. If you can increase light exposure at the bottoms of the hedges, that's going to help much more than if they're being shaded out at the bottom. And then also just the practice in general of shearing, or as some people call it, hedging. There are certain advantages to it. The main advantages is the aesthetic of it. It looks neat. It can be economical in terms of the tools that are being used, and it provides like a lot of the forms that we're used to. However, and this is taken from Ed Yulman's book on pruning, an illustrated guide. There's a lot of disadvantages to shearing, as you can see here. I'm not going to outline everything. I mean, it's quite numerous, but I'm going to highlight here in a couple of slides like why shearing can be difficult or biologically on the plant. The alternative that's out there is called reduction cutting, and it takes a little bit more knowledge in terms of how to incorporate it, and the look is not going to be as clean aesthetically. But in some instances, it might be suitable for some places. I know that like maybe that won't necessarily work all the time on these really high-end landscapes, but it should be a tool in your toolbox, just like all these things from integrated pest management we've been covering. The practices for how to horticulturally manage plants are also important to consider. So if you're shearing a lot of times, and like and this can happen even with repeated pruning in general, we're constantly opening up the plant to wound. You're opening up the plant's vascular tissue to potential infection. So this is a really common disease. It's called botrysphaeria, or bot canker, some people call it. Like, and it can pop up in a lot of shrubby plants, and I mean, it happens in trees as well. But this is something that is spread very easily through landscaping equipment, and generally just weakens the plants overall. So a lot of the ficuses, from what I've talked to, the UF specialists and the landscapers that are handling this problem, this is a very persistent problem that goes hand in hand a lot of the times with the ficus issues. And so this is something that is going to be simultaneously weakening plant on top of the issues with the fly, the whitefly. And so just something to keep in mind, like that, we're treating these plants in a really unnatural way, and there are going to be consequences because of that. So this is actually an example from another pest that we've been dealing with called thrips parvispinus. However, the principle still stands here. You can see here, I think this is sea plum, but you can see that the damage that the insect is causing is on the new growth. And if you go and look at the more mature growth that was there before the populations this pest had built up, they're relatively unaffected. And so here they are together, another in perspective together. So the issue here is that a lot of times that mature plant leaves are able to build up phytochemicals, phytodefenses, like within them. And these are basically like the plant's chemical defenses against predators. It's what makes them, if you taste a plant and it tastes bitter, a lot of times those are those phytochemicals. And so this is kind of the same principle that in the landscape, if we're constantly shearing off and causing new growth to be coming out, that's providing a constant source of new growth that it has less of those concentrations of phytochemicals, and therefore the defense is going to be lower overall whenever they're putting out that new growth. So it's just something to keep in mind, in terms of lining up like your chemical applications and your shearing that you're going to be doing. And then, okay, so I'm jumping over here to the other big aspect in terms of managing your hedges. And I think many of you are already familiar with this, but like managing low diversity for hedges can lead to some very catastrophic outcomes. So breaking up the homogeneous areas or strips, the monoculture, so to speak, this is going to be one of the most crucial aspects to slow the spread of pests and diseases. And like as Alexandra mentioned, and Z too, like this species is a pretty poor flyer. It doesn't disperse that well on its own. So being able to break up these homogeneous clumps of ficus that oftentimes look like this, you can use other things that are out there. Kara is going to go into more detail in terms of species, but it's good just to break things up and have little. I mean, it's the same concept as like almost a wildfire. Like you're just providing fire breaks, like to stop. It doesn't mean that it's going to stop the spread, but it's going to severely slow it down in some instances. So here it is with Clusia. So, and then I guess what I'm trying to emphasize here is that if you look at what's going on here, this is at the entrance of a community, that diversity can look really nice. A lot of times we hear people push back from like trying to, in terms of trying to say, well, we want a clean aesthetic. We want an aesthetic that looks really nice and uniform. But if you plan the right way, like you can probably do this quite easily and relatively cheaply with some of the plant materials that are out there. Some of these plant materials are really widely common that I've got in this slide. So just starting out, moving down the line, we've got Arbicola, we've got Philodendron, we have saw palmetto, back to the Philodendron, more Arbicola. On the bottom here, you've got a little bit of Crotons even. Back to more Arbicola. And then interestingly, like they broke it up and added a little bit more dimension to this this hedge by having some cocoa plum in the background. And then they finish it off here with Panama Rose. So, I mean, this is a lot going on, and you might not want to have every area look like this. You can still, but you can alternate just between 2 or 3 different species. That would provide a huge amount of relief in terms of pest control. So, and then as you can see here, what's the alternative? A lot of people are taking the nuclear option right now and just flat out removing the ficus hedges. And, you know, these here in this example have probably been there for maybe decades at this point. So, but they're not holding up the way they used to. But potentially I mean, that might be a really extreme option. Like one of the maybe breaking up. You might want to try breaking up some of these areas first before alternate or going to the extreme management prescription of just removing them all. And you can see here, this is actually right across the street from that community where there was tons of diversity near the entrance in terms of the hedges that they're using. So, and here, yeah, so I guess with a final note here, this doesn't need to be the ultimate fate. I mean, some people or some communities have decided that they really can't afford to not go this route at this point. But there may be other things in your toolbox, and like that, the big thing to keep in mind is including other species and maybe implementing them before going to this complete removal. So, and with that, I'm going to pass it off to Kara, who is going to cover all the different types of ways to things or species in that toolbox. Like
all the different ones, there's too many. Thank you, John. Alex and Z, I really appreciate it. Everything that you're sharing and all the work that you're doing. It's really important for all the folks that are on the call, for the management, and how we kind of help people move their management plans in the right direction. So I'm going to share my screen, and hopefully everything goes well here. Do you see the presentation?
Yeah, you need to alternate your display.
Perfect. Okay, so we're going to talk about, I'm going to bring up and talk about alternatives to the wall of ficus that we have lived with for decades here in South Florida. This beautiful Ficus benjamina hedge, this is what we would like to think that it looks like, but oftentimes it looks like this. So what are our options? We've talked about management plans from scouting biological controls and chemical controls. But then also, John did mention interspersing different species and creating diversity in our landscapes, which is really important because we've seen how just a little bit of diversity can reduce the pest pressures in the landscape just by interspersing some different species to break up how Ficus whitefly can transmit along a hedge line. So here's, as John was showing some pictures of plant diversity, here's also some plant diversity in hedge material. This is a lot of hedges. We have everything from sea grape, green island ficus, some silver buttonwood, but it's about creating different, adding different species to our landscape so that we're not just, providing a whole feast where the insects and pests and diseases can just run down the line. But let's get into some plants. I think we're probably most familiar with one of the most commonly used plant material now here in South Florida is small leaf collusia. There's some debate upon what its scientific name is, Clusia guttifera, or I've also seen flava. It does have some cold tolerance issues, so probably even up into St. Lucie County, you might start having some damage on cold evenings in the winter, but it is a beautiful plant that gets, I mean, super thick, gorgeous hedge lines. The thick leaves are also really nice for blocking any noise from roads and the visuals. It does a really nice job. But as we've experienced here so far over the last 20 years, we want to be careful about monocultures. And that's kind of the path that's going right now with all of the collusia that's being put in. So yes, it is a wonderful option to replace any ficus hedges with, because it does create that fabulous block. Let's make sure that we're still thinking about plant diversity. And then also, this doesn't do very well with hedge trimming, because when you cut the leaves, you get all that sap. I mean, when you cut the stems as well, you get a lot of that sap, which does stain, but cut leaves do then persist and kind of make it a little unsightly. So it does do a little bit better when hand trimmed. But it can have a nice natural look, or even that nice, clean, beautiful green hedge. And I do want to make sure that we mention that collusia, small leaf collusia, is not a native species to Florida. The picture on the bottom right, the Collusia rosea, is our native species, which is also an option. You can purchase that as a shrub. It can grow into a tree, just like the small leaf collusia, but Collusia rosea, if you have the option to install that over the small leaf collusia, that perhaps is a good place to go. Another non-native species and really common and wonderful hedge material is Podocarpus. It does very well in tight places. It takes well to hedge trimming. It can be in full sun to part shade, very drought tolerant. Doesn't want to be overwatered. It can have some aphid problems, which then can cause some sooty mold, but generally it's a really wonderful hedge, especially in those tight areas that might also not be full sun. It creates that nice dark green, sharp, beautiful hedge line that a lot of people are looking for when we're talking about hedges. One that is a little bit more exciting is our copperleaf, because it comes in a variety of colors, which is pretty fun. You can mix it in, used the different varieties of copperleaf to bring some excitement into the landscape. As you can see, I have a couple of pictures of some different varieties, but there's also ones that are kind of this really dark purple, almost black color. There's ruffling leaves, as well as some long stringy leaves. It's a really fun plant to add to the landscape because it is so vibrant and can bring that vibrancy. It is a fast grower, so you will have to do some regular trimming on it, but it does create and grow quickly a really thick, full hedge to block whatever view you're trying to block. Buttonwoods. So here in South Florida, we have green and silver buttonwood. I didn't get a good picture of any hedges, but they do create a really lovely hedge that can be kept as sharp, formal corners, and it does well in coastal areas because it does have high salt tolerant. It is very drought tolerant. It is a native plant, which is wonderful. It's pretty readily available, which is also a plus, because that's what we really want is plants that are that we can add into the landscape or use as replacements that are not going to be difficult to find, and then also do well here in South Florida. Not a whole lot of pest and disease issues here. And again, it's a little bit slower in growing, not, I would say moderate. It's a moderate grower, but it does create a really beautiful hedge. If you want to keep it that way. It also, as you can see, becomes really, really attractive trees with interesting bark. But again, there's the silver and green varieties that you can utilize here in South Florida. Sea grape, one of our quintessential coastal plants, does well as large trees and also kept as hedges. It does well with being trimmed, and you don't have to trim on it too terribly often. You can let it grow out and then trim it back, and it'll fill back in. This is also a really wonderful native plant, wildlife friendly as well, so you'll be able to attract pollinators and birds and things with the flowers and the fruit. This is honestly one of my favorite plants, so strong recommendation for marlberry. It is a native plant, and the flowers are beautifully fragrant. It's such a great scent to have in the garden and in the landscape. It is a slower grower. It's more columnar in shape, as you can see from the picture on the left. That is a standalone plant, but what happens is it can take some shade, a fair amount of shade. It has these really lovely dark green leaves, densely foliated, so you get that really thick hedge, but it's pretty upright. So this does really well if you are doing smaller hedges, just because it is a slower growing, and also if you're doing a mixed native hedge, a native buffer, this does really well, kind of being mixed in, but the flowers are wonderful for pollinators, and fruit are great for our wildlife as well. Cocoa plum, used very frequently in South Florida landscapes, native plant. And here we have it as a kind of a mixed line with some sea grape, saw palmetto, and actually necklace pod, which is another great native plant, mixed in together to create this kind of buffer small hedge line along a coastal area. And super drought tolerant, wildlife friendly, can get very tall. So I think a lot of folks see it as, a hedge that's often kept as 4 feet tall, 3 or 4 feet tall in parking lot areas, but this can get up to 20, 30 feet tall if you allow it. So it is a really great option to use a native plant and kind of mix this into our hedge lines. If you like the kind of diversity of color too, which is pretty fun, that there's the light green new growth. There's also the red tip cocoa plum that can add some interest there as well. Simpson stopper, another very common native plant, great for pollinators and wildlife. This can take well to hedging. The picture on the left is actually a mixed hedge. There's some collusia, small leaf collusia next to this, the Simpson stopper. It has that more formal look with the smaller leaf, so you get kind of that boxwood look that a lot of folks may be interested in. But again, it in full sun, when you're doing the hedging, it will be more successful, but it can take some partial shade. But the full sun is really, really ideal for it, especially if you're trimming on it to keep it as a hedge so that it'll stay nice and dense from the top to the bottom. Firebush is a wonderful plant for a little bit of a more natural hedge, just because it does need to be a little bit fluffy, I guess, for lack of a better term. But it can be trimmed on and kept in check if you need it to be. It can grow over 12 feet tall, so that's plenty of height for a large hedge. A lot of our hedges that are probably being dealt with ficus are oftentimes well over 6 feet tall. So Amelia patens firebush, or native firebush, can do well in filling in that space, just because it's also a much faster grower. So it'll fill in quite quickly, but you will have to trim on it a fair bit, which could cut down on your flowering and fruiting. But that's just something to be aware of, and perhaps have a little bit different of a maintenance plan if you're intending to use firebush or a lot of these native plants, to know when they're flowering and fruiting, to capitalize on that for our pollinators and wildlife. A plant that I don't think it's used enough as hedge material. It does look a little bit wild, but it can be hedge trimmed. It can be trimmed into a nice hedge, is Florida privet. It is a nice, small, fine texture leaf that can be very densely foliated, as you can see from the picture on the left. And it does have wonderful flowers and fruit for wildlife, but it can be trimmed up to be a nice, formal, tight hedge in full sun to part sun, very drought tolerant, but it does create a really nice, tight, dense hedge if that's how you choose to approach it. Spanish stopper. This is a stopper similar to Simpson stopper. Sometimes if you're unfamiliar, you might confuse the two, but they do have a little bit different of a leaf pattern, but it is a smaller leaf, so it kind of does give that nice formal look. It is more columnar and upright than Simpson stopper typically is, but it also has very similar characteristics with its flowering and fruiting, a little bit slower growing, but it does have a really nice, beautiful, rounded small leaf that is really attractive in the landscape. And as you can see, it's actually right next to, just to the left of it in the picture on the left is a marlberry that, this is a little bit of a native buffer, it looks like. But this does really well being trimmed and kept as a hedge to kind of have a nice, dense, small leafed hedge. If you want to mix this in, it would be really, really attractive. And Walter's viburnum, again, this is a smaller leaf native plant, very drought tolerant. So also I want to mention that when I'm saying drought tolerant, that's once established. So plant material does need an establishment period. But this has beautiful, prolific white flowers, and is a very dense shrub that can be trimmed into a hedge material. This particular example is a little bit looser, but it's covering up windows. This is probably 6 feet tall, and it's on the north side of a house. So it does get sun, but not full sun all year. But this is a really, I think, an exceptional example of what Walter's viburnum can do as a hedge. And then here's a small list of some other material that is really wonderful as hedges, as John has shown, and using saw palmettos and kind of a mixed buffer. The bottom right picture is white stopper. I will say that one of it is similar to other stoppers in the sense that it does have the flower and the fruiting for our wildlife. It is a native plant, but it gives off a little bit of a skunky smell sometimes if the wind is blowing right, which is some people think is interesting. Other people are not keen on, so that is something to think about with that. The bottom middle picture is a hedge of Jamaican caper, which is also really wonderful, especially when it flowers with its beautiful flowers. And then again, showing a picture of our native Clusia rosea that is always an option instead of continuing with using the small leaf Clusia that we've been implementing so much into hedges. But so these are our hedge materials options. There are so many more also that are out there. But if you ever have any questions, please reach out to us here at Extension. We are happy to help you and guide you with whatever kind of material or questions you may have about your landscape. So I'll pass it back off.
All right, well, I think we're a little over time here, so let's try and keep the Q&A a little bit low. If anyone is interested in CEUs, they'll pop up at the end, like when we end the Zoom meeting here. So just hang with us. We've got one more thing in addition to the Q&A. We want to do the post test as well. But yeah, if anyone has any quick questions here, go ahead and put those in the chat, or go ahead and mute yourself, and you've got the full panel's abilities here to try and answer these. So I did see something in the chat about agrobacterium galls. I mean, it would be the same principle. I mean, anytime that you're cutting into these plants, like you're giving them, you're potentially spreading some of these pests and diseases, more the diseases in this case. So just, I mean, that's what I would have to say about that. And sanitation's key. And so if you're on a site that you know that you have that problem, just be really cognizant of it. All right, well, let's go ahead and end the Q&A then. We're going to, if you like, all of us are, are
John,
available. Yep.
sorry to interrupt, but I put a question in the Q&A for Ahmed or for Z. in relation to actually having Whitefly and dealing with a chemical control company that's coming out and understanding the different categories and how you rotate them, so that you can get them to, do a drench or what is appropriate and what time period in order to combat the whitefly. So if you could address a little bit, because I think the chart is great, but it's hard to understand, and I don't know enough to be able to make an informed decision to speak to the guys that are spraying and what they should be using.
All right, Z.
So can you see the screen?
Yes.
Yes.
So the idea behind this document was to help you not just with the chemical option, but also to understand there are other which life stages are vulnerable, which are not. So if you see, I'm going to give you a very, very quick overview about this document. So there's the introduction, then there is the information about different life stages: eggs, crawlers, early nymphaean star, and late nymphaean star, pupae, adult. Then there's the scouting methods available, which I would suggest you to read. And then application interval, which is very important when you are dealing with the landscaper companies, and they give you option for product. This list most probably is up to date, so you can go to check the product. We did put the name of most of commercial product names are there. You can check there, and I would suggest you to not only check the name, also check the interval time. For example, for foliar spray, there are like 7 to 10 days interval, and for systemic insecticide is a 6 to 12 month. Again, this is depending on the product, so I would suggest reading application interval very carefully. And then we have a rotate. So we mentioned Ficus whitefly resistance management in this paragraph, in this document. That would help you right away. But still, if you have any question, I will be happy to answer. And then insecticide application timing. So when you read the rotation, that's very important. And then you also need to know about the application timing. So we put that paragraph there. Then another important aspect which we put in the document is insecticide coverage. It is very important. Then there's a conservation of natural enemies. Then the heavy infestation. When there is a heavy infestation, what you're going to do. Then about the labels. Then the pruning, fertilizer. There are a lot of questions about fertilizing. So if you go back to the table on this, so there are, as I think Alex pointed out very clearly, that these chemicals in these documents, they are color coded. So if you are planning rotation, you don't want to use the same color. So whenever they are giving you, so before I go into rotation thing, I want to actually give you a very quick overview about this table. So there's a trade names in the first column, then the active ingredients, then mode of action. So these colors are based on mode of action. Then application method. F is for foliar. These abbreviations are at the bottom of the table. F is for foliar and D is for drenching. So you can see which chemical product have option for foliar spray, or which has option for foliar or drenching, both. Then the label rate. These rate can change. So I hyperlinked them with the label. So you should go back and check the updated label if the rates are changed. But most of the time, the labels, it takes too long for them to update it. I don't think so. Any label might have changed in the last 2 years. But it is very important to confirm with the labels too. So we provided the rate here, but that probably may be not your concern. Your concern would be the interval time, which is very important, and how many applications you can do for that. And then the site, which product is the product with the P is for production area only for ficus production. L is for landscape. So when a landscaper or any pesticide company giving you option for chemical, I would go first, check the which chemical they are giving you options for. Then their what rotation plan they're giving you, because the rotation plan, as I mentioned, and Alex pointed out very clearly, that they are based on color. So you want to check that. And obviously, I think in the end, so then there are safer options here in that table as well, like entomopathogenic fungi, PFR, which are very commonly used in the landscape. Then there are other options like oil and like the safer option, as I think Alex pointed out very clearly. So then in the bottom, there are all abbreviation which I mentioned above, and then I also marked some of those with the with numbering. And for example, I want to give you one option numbering here, like number 1 here, which is somewhere here on the first row. Number 1 should be somewhere here. So that is 7. So this TriStar, if you see, I actually marked this number 1. So it is not just I look at the table, but I would also really suggest that please go into the footnotes. So number 1, if you go at the footnote, it says that do not apply more than 4 applications per year. So if you read this, it is very self-explanatory, this document. But if you have still you have any question, please feel free to contact us, Alex, John, Kara, and me. So we will be happy to answer your question. But I tried my best to put every information which you would need in footnotes, which may be not easy to understand, but footnotes may help you to understand. Then I also put the abbreviation at the bottom and the formulation. And then insecticide rotation is at I think the one paragraph is here at the bottom. I would suggest that reading that. So please read it. I believe it is self-explanatory for most part. But yeah, just please feel free to contact us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Z. So I've got one more question here, and then we'll go ahead and we'll go to the Q or to the post quiz. And this is probably more for Z and Alexandra. So if you could quantify or estimate, maybe give some percentage to this for ficus defoliation, based off of like the things that could be causing it. How much could you attribute it basically, like what percentage would you say is whitefly versus environmental versus cultural? And I know this is kind of an open-ended question, and there's probably quite a bit of overlap there.
Alex, you want to go first? Or I can
Rosie.
comment. You want to go?
No, you can answer.
So so in general, we have abiotic stresses and biotic stresses for any plant, right? So for ficus in general, any stress, either is abiotic or abiotic, it's kind of shows defoliation very quickly. So whether it's related to not even ficus whitefly, it will still show defoliation. For example, if pruning was not done right, or if the culture practices were not done right, it can still show defoliation. But the amount of defoliation because of the abiotic stresses, which I understand based on my experience, is a lot less as compared to because of the ficus whitefly. I don't know if I answered your question.
Z, if I can add there, ficus is a very moody plant. I mean, if you have a lot of water over there, it's flooded, it's going to drop the leaves. If the ficus is a very dry area over there, it's going to drop the leaves. So it's a very moody plant. I mean, it's the character of the plant. So you need to do very, very good scouting to see if the problem is the whitefly or if the problem is abiotic. But this is the first step. I mean, if you're going to waste your money applying insecticide when the problem is that the soil is saturated, so that's key. So it's difficult to have a straightforward answer, but it's too many variables over there.
Yeah, I think that there's a lot of linkages there too. So I mean, the cultural practices lead to an easier environment for the ficus whitefly a lot of times. So as well. So all right, folks, I guess we'll go ahead and wrap up there. Thank you to the full panel here. And then let me see about launching this again. Okay, I think we went ahead and launched it. Let's
Slide
see.
is not there, John.
Okay, let me go ahead and. Okay, I think I just launched it again. Let me go ahead and share my screen. Okay, I think that we've got everything up now. So we'll go ahead and same deal. Give you guys 4 or 5 minutes. All right, I'll give you guys into 30 seconds and then we're gonna wrap up here. All right, gonna go ahead and end the poll.
John, you want to give it the answers?
Let's see. Yeah, we can do that if you'd like. Can you see them, Henry? Hold on, let me get out of the share screen.
It gives us an option to tick a box that says show correct answers to all.
Yeah, I mean, Henry, would you like to go over them or? Oh, Henry, you're muted.
Maybe Alexandra or Z?
Okay, I can do it. So the first one, it says select the appropriate rotation example. The right answer is D. Why is that? Because you will see, first of all, A and C are the same answer, right? They give the same options. So these two already should give you a hint that it's not a viable option. Why? Because we see a 28, which is a different number, a 4A, different number than the 28. Then what follows after is a 23, different number, 7C, different number letter. And then the 4D that has the same number, but it has a D, doesn't have an A. So we have a blend of different groups, and each group appears only once when it's applied. So the first example, the letter A and the letter C that you see, 4A, 3A, 4D, 3A, 4A, this is what is currently happening in the landscape. And this is why a lot of people report failures controlling their Ficus whitefly, because the people continuously putting active ingredients that belong to the same group. And this is not an appropriate rotation. This can cause problems with resistance if you don't take a good look of what is happening, right? So when we say rotate the numbers, rotate the colors that we saw today, as we explained, and make sure, especially the homeowners, when they talk to the pest control companies, make sure you get the information that you want. Disclaimer, the 4A, which are traditionally systemic insecticides, very efficacious, especially like for pests like the Ficus whitefly. There are several products with different active ingredients. They are older chemistry and they are very affordable in comparison to newer chemistry like the 28, the 23, that they are more expensive. And this is why they are preferred also, because then you keep the management costs low. So just as to have in the back of your mind that when you do chemical control, sometimes the expenses increase based on the product. So number two, which are the most sustainable strategies to manage the Ficus whitefly? What we saw is we need to do IPM, so we need to use all the management practices and include monitoring and scouting of the heads. So the correct answer is H, that we need to do all of the practices that we saw today, right? Biological control is not feasible in the landscape. I showed you research data that this is false. Biological control is feasible in the landscape. Z, during his postdoc, he found a lot of natural enemies associated with the Ficus whitefly, and we know that they are here in Florida. So the best strategy is to take advantage of their presence in our hedges and make sure we don't kill them when we apply chemical control strategies. Okay, then avoiding monocultures and adding plant diversity to our hedge material can help reduce pest pressures in the landscape. The correct answer is true. Regarding the slide, why was control of Ficus whitefly failed on the hedge in the left house? The correct answer is B. It was due to the delay in insecticide application. In order to talk about resistance, we really need more in-depth research that really targets the resistance. And this is something very complex, extremely time-consuming, and is not straightforward. But we always do practices in mind that we don't want to end up with this problem, okay? So, question 6, and it's also on another slide. Here's the population dynamics of Ficus whitefly throughout the year. When should preventive systemic insecticide application against Ficus whitefly be applied? The correct answer is D, before or at the start of the spring. So when the Ficus whitefly is at its lowest, and then you give enough time for the active ingredient to be taken up from the plant and move all the way to the upper parts of the canopy. So then you can achieve, you give the real enough time for the product to do its work. Slide 7. Which one is pupa of the Ficus whitefly? The correct answer is A. Another slide. Which one is the adult of the Ficus whitefly? The correct answer is C. And This
So I want to add one thing here, if Alex, it's okay.
Yes, of course.
So the question 5, it was very crucial for me to bring the question 5 here. I don't know if you can see, I think John has a mouse there. The reason I want to just put one comment here, I'm very glad that 92% in the post-test people, in the post-test participant, they are saying it is because of delay in insecticide application. It's a really huge achievement for today's webinar, that people are accepting that it's not because of insecticide resistance, because there was a huge issue that probably is because of resistance. No, you can see there are both hedges are there. One is defoliated, one is not. And if it is a resistance, you will find both of them should be defoliated. So I'm very glad to see it was 75% in the start of the pre-test, and 95% people participant, they said delay in insecticide application in the post-test. It's a huge. I'm very glad to see that. Thank you. Yeah.
All right, well, I think that we wrapped up the Q&A here. Let me see if I can somehow even get out of this. So, yeah, we went a little long here, but I mean, I think that given that like this is going to be a resource that's available as a video, we wanted to make sure that provide as much information as we could here. And I just want to go ahead and thank everybody that presented. So, and made this possible. So Dr. Alexander Ravinthi from Trek, Dr. Z Ahmed from USDA up in Vero Beach area, and then Indian River, and then Kara Kruger from our office here, and Dr. Henry Meyer from Miami-Dade County. So thank you all, and I guess we'll go ahead, pay attention for the recording. We'll be mailing it out via email in the next couple of days. And if you have any problems with CEUs and processing, please give me an email, jwr.09@ufl.edu. So with that, hope everybody has a good rest of their afternoon and weekend here too. Take care.
Thank you, John and Henry.
Thank you very much for the invitation.
Thank you, guys.